Lecture 37, Urbanism and Digital Narratives After COVID. We're talking those three distinct things in these couple lectures. Urbanism, how vulnerable are cities? How do they make a coagulation of heightened risk in terms of Ulrich Beck, Giddens, reflective modernity, Zygmunt Bauman, liquid modernity, philosophers, thinkers, sociologists, talking emerging out of the types of kind of nihilism of the late 80s, postmodernism, and returning back to agency and modernity. We saw that societies become these risk coagulations, dense risk. 1,200 people were dying a night in April in my boroughs surrounding in New York for quite a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. 300 people were dying at home a night, a day. Um, um, I did not want, I wanted to take educated risks. I did not want to take profligate risks in going out. I ate in. As a matter of fact, the restaurants didn't move to the exterior tables where you could pull your masks down until maybe June. And then the little huts were very nice, kind of a silver lining to the whole thing. Globalization. This is a class within the globalization department major. Modernity as that thing out of Rousseau, Kant, and Adam Smith. European, but flavored by each of those cultures, French, German, and Anglo. Um, Modernity, let's just use the shorthand, it's the maximization of the individual life. But empowerment, maximization, justice, fraternity, liberté, equalite. We often don't reach those things. The otherness of ethnic, racial others, the otherness of, as we mentioned in the previous one, symbolic exchange and death out of thoughts of Baudrillard consists of sequestering, hiding, death. We saw a lot of that during COVID. And this is a counterpoint to modernity with the modernist project in order to hide and find prohibitions to talking, thinking, feeling, um, um, realizing death. We have put it aside. Foucault called it sequestering. We did see that during COVID, put it away, but we saw it everywhere. I saw the refrigerator trucks while biking to the park with the racked dead outside in the parking lots, on the streets of hospitals, 2, 3, 4 hospitals close by myself here in Brooklyn. From 1700, it gestated during the 1700s into the 19th century. Aim, increased control by the individual. Institutions, Giddens talks about in terms of his reflexive modernity. We rationalize control systems. Bureaucrats, oh my God, they seem to have gotten out of control during COVID. The official word coming down from Cuomo or Trump or Fauci or overseas. What could we believe? It is part of this risk culture in that I know I do every time I go into a doctor just for a checkup or some little minor ailment. I usually check the internet for the series of possibilities. This is one of the clearest concepts of risk culture through reflexive modernity. Let me see what I can uh, counter, complement the doctor's analysis of me through all this information online. The internet figures huge in this working out of semio-capitalism, the semio desire, that Baudrillard, Berardi, Virilio, many of the late 80s, let's just, lack of a better word, call them postmodernists. Some were more nihilistic than others. I think in Foucault's analysis, Discipline and Punish, he became lost in this kind of nihilism of House of Signs. Umberto Eco. These were not, as Camille Paglia asserts, not just language games. Perhaps they were taken too seriously as language games. They were bulwarked up against biology, science, neuroendocrinology. Deleuze and Guattari talked about the anti-Oedipus and the condition of capitalism and schizophrenia. These were roadmaps. These were nonlinear roadmaps expressed by many of these French, some English, German, Giddens, Ulrich Beck, directly talking about risk. Zygmunt Bauman and certain Anglo philosophers on the notion, some kind of, let's call it, American journalistic sort of responses to risk culture. Rushcliffe, Clay Shirky, Anderson, Kevin Kelly said, who states that the Google search will eradicate all Socratic methods in knowledge finding. We see these things development. Rationalization, industrial society capitalism, Adam Smith, the unseen hand principle, the pin factory example of distributional labor. What is the essence? Time-space destination, development of disembedding mechanisms, symbolic tokens, expert systems. That's Anglo-Giddens, and the French school is pretty much shooting from the hip and saying, from the surface of the individual, as the individual wishes to go on the inside, it encounters the condition of schizophrenia, as in Deleuze and Guattari, because the semio structure, the idea of where, what, how should I take good information on which to base my sense of agency, illness, marriage, schooling, debt, buying a house, all these things that were formerly entitlement, intimacy, formerly an entitlement, become fraught with risk. It was interesting discussion with some friends my age with children in their teens, that there's a tendency now, even out of COVID, to travel in these kind of, lack of a better word, wolf packs, where agency is distributed across boys and girls. Am I largely speaking about cisgender sort of wolf packs? Anything can happen within that. They have pure information from the internet, from their social media, from porn sites, from sort of an array of drugs and alcohol. In this series of choices, recreational or otherwise, or intimate, or the founding of desire within these wolf packs, certain manifestations happen that my generation cannot quite fathom. To continue, modernity is not tradition. There's this idea that it exists outside tradition, even though we have a tradition of modernity, that it is out there. Ecological modernization, sociology of networks, and flows. Again, bulwarked by technology. There's an Acadian view of nature, political ecology, transition theory, triad of network model, institutional government. All these things that help us regulate the environment still cannot bulwark against climate change, tsunamis, nuclear meltdowns, viruses, pollution, things that create risk societies out of industrial societies, distributing the bad, and so forth. This was another productivity level and productivity structure. We have this alternation in modernity, modernism, wealth society, risk society. Share the pie, spare the pie. Bring your level of risk down. Certainly, many of the upper middle class I knew headed out of the city simply um, from a fear of concentrated individuals. Essential workers took the subways. There was an explosion of bikes and electric bike activity as people chose to, if they had to commute by these means. And there's, under wealth society, there's a commonality of need. Let's distribute even amongst the poor. Now there's a commonality of anxiety. This is, Ulrich Beck is kind of the, in my view, the sociologist of risk in our cities, which 40 to 50% of the global population live in for various reasons cited before. And certainly with the internet. What do we risk with the internet? As we saw the movie A Social Condition, we risk to be subtly manipulated. Our databases, we look for what we look for, are, as Jaron Lanier pointed out, it's not so much the society, a control society that cares about what you care about. It's how they can manipulate you into caring about a beautiful food selfie on Instagram or a twerking babe or a rippling six pack on a guy. What kind of psychology, semiotic psychology, has social media created? Industrial risk, first generation, second generation environmental problems explode. We see nihilism explode. We see kind of nihilism within these wolf packs, I contend, that with a lack of agency, of subverting of desire, the functionality of recreational drugs and alcohol become the kind of smokescreen to which agency can emerge and then disappear back into these wolf packs. Risk society. There was another. The virus was the notification that nature is still here. Further risk society of war. We have side effects in globalization. Increased unpredictability, hence fear, hence technologies that we depended upon in modernization. As Heidegger said, technos was the background to which the foreground of agency happened. We see that inverted. We see technology in the front, largely in the form of this semio capitalism of these screens telling us what to do. When before you go to the doctor, look this up. Before you go to that party, look at everything that could go wrong. Drunk kids, what can happen, who is liable for your own desire and the desire of the other. We see a risk culture, certainly with the notion, as Illouz talked about, intimacy, construction of intimacy as the centralized project. Moving further, equality. Are we still rolling? We are not still rolling. You still hear me? I have no idea. We stopped here at about 15.